We're told to chase pleasure. That's the goal. But Seneca, the Stoic, he said something else. He said, if you're a slave to pleasure, you'll never be free. And that idea, it started a kind of rebellion, a war, a deliberate, reasoned war against just feeling good, because the pursuit of pleasure, it has a cost. A hidden cost. It makes you fragile, anxious. What if the things we run toward for happiness, they actually break us? What if freedom isn't about getting what you want? It's about wanting differently. That's the Stoic alternative. It's not about grim endurance. It's about tranquility, profound tranquility. So the question is, what does the good life actually require? The ancient hedonists had a simple idea. Happiness is just more pleasure, more happiness. It's a direct line, but the Stoics looked at that and saw a mistake. They saw a promise that couldn't be kept because pleasure is an event. It comes from outside. It's fleeting by nature, and to build your life on it is to build on sand. Their first big doubt was about control. What's actually up to us? Epictetus drew a line. On one side, our judgments, our choices, our intentions, that's up to us. On the other side, everything else, including the feelings of pleasure and pain, those aren't up to us. They come and go on their own. So to make your happiness depend on something you can't control is to give away the keys to your own well-being. Think about the high from a new purchase, a device, a fancy meal. The pleasure is real, but it fades and often quickly. And what's left is the object and this quiet question, is that all? Now compare that to the satisfaction from practicing temperance, choosing moderation not as a punishment, but as an act of self-command. That feeling comes from within. It's generated by your choice, not delivered by an event. It doesn't fade when the object is gone, because the virtue itself was the point. You can think of a recent pleasure, something you pursued eagerly, that left you feeling empty or wanting more, almost right after it was over. That wanting is the signal. It's the Stoic doubt, whispering that you might be chasing a shadow, mistaking a brief sensation for the substance of a good life. The Stoics took a radical step. They demoted pleasure, not as something evil or sinful, something more subtle, and because of that, more powerful. They called it an indifferent. It sounds cold, but the idea is actually liberating. In their view, the only real good is virtue, your character, your moral reasoning. Everything else falls into this other category: your health, your wealth, your reputation, and your feelings of pleasure. They're called indifferents because they don't make you a good or bad person. They're just materials to be used well or poorly. But there's a twist. Not all indifferents are the same. Some are preferred, some are dispreferred. Pleasure, health, comfort, these are preferred. It's natural to choose them. It can even be virtuous to choose them, but they aren't good in themselves. They don't lead to your flourishing, to eudaimonia. That comes only from virtue, from how you choose to engage with these indifferent things. Marcus Aurelius wrote about seeing things stripped of the story. See a fine meal as nourishment. See a comfortable chair as a place to rest. The moment you add the story that this meal is your reward, that this comfort is your right, you start chaining your happiness to something outside you. You move from using the object to needing the feeling. Think of pleasure as a helpful tool, like comfortable shoes for a long walk. The shoes are preferred. They make the journey easier, but you don't worship the shoes. Your goal is the walk, the destination, moving forward with integrity. The moment you think the shoes are the purpose, you've lost the path. Now bring to mind 3 pleasures you treat as necessities: your morning coffee ritual, the constant digital entertainment, the expectation of a lavish weekend. Consider life without them, not with dread but with curiosity. What would your mind do? What would your attention turn toward if that channel of pleasure wasn't available? This isn't about deprivation. It's about revealing the architecture of your dependencies. It asks you to see the pleasure not as a necessity, but as a preferred indifferent. A thing you may choose, a thing you need not be enslaved by. This reclassification is the quiet heart of the Stoic rebellion. It doesn't ask you to hate pleasure. It asks you to see it clearly for what it truly is. The Stoics had a clear view on this. They saw pleasure as a primary goal, and they described the cost in stark terms. It's a loss of freedom, a kind of self-imposed slavery. When you make the feeling of pleasure the target, you're no longer in command. You're tied to your appetites and to the outside world, which can give or take that pleasure away whenever it wants. Epictetus said it bluntly: freedom is secured not by fulfilling desires, but by removing them. He warned that we chain ourselves with cravings stronger than iron. A prisoner in a cell still has freedom of thought, of judgment, but a person enslaved to a desire has given up their inner citadel. That's the hidden cost. The pursuit of pleasure doesn't just fail to bring lasting happiness. It actively makes you less free. It hands the reins of your inner peace over to things you can't control. The mechanism for this is what the Stoics called prohairesis, your faculty of moral choice, your capacity to judge what is good and act on it. That's your true self, your inner commander. Every time you chase a pleasure not as a simple preference, but as a necessity, you weaken that commander. You train it to look outside for its orders. Think of a desire as a leash. The object of your desire holds one end, the perfect meal, the latest gadget, constant validation. You hold the other and it pulls you. Your attention, your energy, your peace of mind are all tugged in that direction. The Stoic practice is to drop the leash, not to destroy the thing on the other end, but to cease being pulled by it. To see it for what it is, an indifferent, something that may be used but never needed. You can see this slavery in quiet anxieties, the stress of maintaining a lavish lifestyle, where the fear of losing it overshadows any joy it brings. The subtle panic when your phone dies, cutting you off from a stream of distraction you've come to depend on. These aren't just minor inconveniences. They're symptoms of a deeper bondage. Your tranquility has become contingent on external conditions. You've rented out your soul. Now, bring it down to a single question. What desire, if it were gently removed from your life today, would make you feel freer? Is it the need for that second coffee, not for the taste, but for the ritual you feel you can't start your day without? Is it the compulsion to check for notifications, feeding a low-grade anxiety about what you might be missing? The freedom the Stoics point to isn't found in having everything you want. It's found in the serene space between a stimulus and your response to it. It's the freedom of the person who can enjoy a pleasure, yet remains completely undisturbed by its absence. That's the alternative to slavery. That's the tranquility they fought for. The pursuit of pleasure tends to destroy the peace it's supposed to bring. That's the contradiction. It sends you outward into constant acquisition, but real tranquility comes from turning inward. The Stoics called that state ataraxia, a deep, unshakable calm. It comes from aligning your will with nature and reason. It's an active achievement, and it can't coexist with a life spent chasing sensations. Seneca wrote about this. He said tranquility isn't found in noisy pursuits. People flee from themselves. They rush from party to party, from one distraction to the next, because the quiet of their own company is unbearable. They mistake excitement for happiness. They don't see that the frantic search itself is what creates the unease. The hedonistic chase is like trying to find stillness by running faster. The motion itself keeps you from ever arriving. Now contrast that chase with Stoic practice. Think about planning an extravagant vacation, the obsessive research. The fear of missing out, the anxiety over cost, the letdown when reality doesn't match the fantasy. Then consider a simple, contented walk, no real destination. Just to move and observe, the mind settles, it notices details, it's just present. One activity is a project of consumption, fueled by expectation. The other is an exercise in being, fueled by acceptance. The first drains your inner peace to pay for a temporary thrill. The second replenishes it. That's the tranquility trap. We think pleasure will bring peace, so we pursue it with a desperate energy that's the opposite of peaceful. We become managers of our own enjoyment, constantly auditing, asking, am I happy enough? Is this fun enough? That audit creates turbulence. It pulls you out of the present and into a future of wants or a past of comparisons. Ataraxia requires dropping the audit, letting the experience be what it is. So reflect on your last week. Look at the actions, big and small. How many were aimed at cultivating inner quiet? And how many were aimed at generating excitement or a temporary high? The point isn't judgment, it's seeing the pattern. The pattern shows where you're investing your energy. Is it in fortifying your inner citadel or in chasing external weather? Every choice for frantic pleasure is a withdrawal from your account of calm. The Stoic alternative is a different kind of deposit. One that compounds in silence. Pleasure is a guest. It comes and goes on its own terms. The Stoics saw that. It was central to their whole view. To build your life around a guest means building on sand. You're at the mercy of the weather, and that's the illusion. We think chasing pleasure is how we control our happiness, but really, we're giving the keys to our contentment to a world we don't control. That's the Stoic line, the dichotomy. Epictetus drew it. Our judgments, our choices, what we try to do, that's ours. Everything else isn't. Pleasure is in that second category. It depends on so much outside, your health, your money, whether an experience is even available, other people's moods. You can set the table perfectly. But you can't make the guest arrive or stay. Marcus Aurelius thought about this. He wrote about the world as a river. Everything in it is just passing by. Don't cling to what the river carries, he said. It was never yours to hold. That meal, that concert, that quiet morning, their leaves on the water. To grasp at them, to think your peace requires holding them, that's a path to quiet desperation. The river just keeps flowing. Think about eating. One way is the gourmet pursuit. It needs the right restaurant, the right chef, the right money, the right mood. If the reservation's gone, or the dish is wrong, or you get a headache, the whole thing falls apart. Your evening's happiness hung on a fragile chain of outside events. Then think about eating a piece of bread with real gratitude, noticing its texture, that it sustains you. That satisfaction doesn't come from the world outside. It comes from inside, from your own attention. It just needs you to be present. One is a castle on the sand. The next tide can take it. The other is a small shelter you carry with you. That's the fragility. A life based on pleasure ties your well-being to fortune's whims, and fortune is fickle. The ancients knew this. It gives and takes without reason. To anchor yourself to it is to choose a kind of anxiety, always waiting for the next thing to go wrong, always managing conditions for your next bit of happiness. So here's a question, a quiet audit. Find one specific pleasure you have now that could be gone tomorrow, through no fault of your own. Maybe it's a daily routine broken by an unexpected event. Maybe it's a food you love that you could become intolerant to. Maybe it's the deep quiet of your house changed by a new circumstance. Don't dwell on losing it. Just see the connection. See how a thread of your contentment is stitched to something outside your command. This isn't pessimism. It's the first step. A sober step toward a more resilient joy. It's about seeing the guest for what it is, so you can enjoy the visit without begging it to stay forever. Stoicism has this mental exercise, negative visualization. They called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of hardships. It sounds wrong at first. Why think about losing what you love? But it's not about fear. It's the opposite. It sharpens appreciation. It inoculates you against the shock of change. It shows you the gift of the present. This practice faces the fragility of a life built on pleasure. It makes that fragility conscious, and that makes it manageable. Seneca was a master. He told his friend Lucilius to rehearse poverty, to wear rough clothes for a few days, eat plain food, sleep on a hard bed, so if fate ever forced that life on him, he wouldn't be afraid. And so he could return to his normal comforts with real gratitude, not just dull entitlement. He wrote that we should tell ourselves, "You might lose this tomorrow." So while it's here, love it truly. The exercise isn't expecting the worst. It's dissolving the assumption that the best is guaranteed. It trains you to see every comfort as a temporary loan. And that makes your enjoyment deeper, more vivid, because you know it's not forever. Try a brief version right now. Think of something you deeply enjoy. Something that gives daily comfort. Maybe it's your home, the safety of its walls, the familiarity of the space. Now, for a moment, imagine it's gone. Not through tragedy, just gone. You are elsewhere without it. Sit with that feeling of absence. Notice what comes up. A sense of vulnerability, maybe a pang of loss for something ordinary. The light through a particular window, then let that thought go. Return to the present. You are here. The home is here. See if your perception shifts. The ordinary becomes sacred. The taken for granted becomes a clear gift. That's the alchemy, negative visualization. It uses the mental rehearsal of loss to turn complacency into gratitude. The practice weakens our attachment to what the Stoics called preferred indifference. By visiting the possibility of their absence in our minds, we prove we could endure it. And that proof builds resilience. It moves pleasure from a category of need, something we're terrified to lose, back into a category of a welcome gift. Our tranquility becomes less dependent on the gift's continued presence. We enjoy it more freely because we're not clutching it. So here's a challenge. Today, take 5 quiet minutes. Choose one thing you cherish: your health, a relationship, your ability to see or walk, the peace of your current circumstances. Gently, calmly contemplate its temporary nature. Imagine life without it, not to frighten yourself, but to see the shape of its value clearly, then return. The Stoics believed this wasn't a morbid duty. It was a daily practice of waking up to your own life. It's the ultimate antidote to taking pleasure for granted. Because it turns every ordinary moment into a quiet, conscious celebration. The Stoics weren't against feeling. They were against being ruled by it. That's the distinction. They aimed for a state apatheia, a freedom from the pathological passions, not an emotionless void, but a clear mind, undisturbed by storms of irrational craving or aversion. It's the difference between enjoying a meal and being consumed by the need for a gourmet experience, or between feeling attraction and being enslaved by lust. The passions, the path, are the problem. They're judgments gone wrong, feelings that have hijacked your reason, convincing you your happiness depends entirely on something outside yourself. Pleasure-seeking, when it becomes compulsive, it's a factory for these passions. It takes a simple preference and turns it into a demand of the universe. Epictetus had a test. He said, "Don't be disturbed by things outside the soul's control. If your peace is shattered because a pleasure was denied, a party cancelled, a purchase failed, a compliment withheld, that disturbance is a passion. It's a signal. Your judgment has tied your well-being to an event. You've handed a piece of your soul over to circumstance. Apatheia is reclaiming it. The inner stillness that remains when the world says no, not because you don't care, but because your care is rooted in something deeper, more stable than getting your way." Picture 2 responses to a cancelled plan. The first person looked forward to a party for weeks. It was their highlight, their source of joy. The host calls it off, and they're furious. They feel robbed, they sulk, complain, their entire evening is ruined. That's pathos, a storm of disappointment, fueled by an irrational attachment to a specific outcome for their happiness. The second person was also looking forward to it. They hear the news, feel a flicker of disappointment, a healthy, natural feeling, and then their mind adjusts. They think, well, now I have a quiet evening. I can read or call a friend or simply rest. Their core tranquility isn't touched. That flicker passes through without setting off alarms. That's apatheia in practice. The event changed, but their command of their inner world did not. This mastery is about seeing desires clearly. A desire for a pleasant experience is natural. But when that desire mutates into a conviction that you must have it, that you cannot be okay without it, it has become a passion. It clouds your judgment. In that state, you might overspend, neglect responsibilities, treat others poorly, all to feed that feeling. The Stoic work is to catch that mutation early. To notice the shift from I would like this to I need this. So reflect for a moment. Can you recall a time when a strong desire for a specific pleasure, maybe for recognition, for a comfort, for a taste or an experience, clouded your better judgment? Perhaps you persisted in a conversation you knew was unwise just to hear a certain praise. Maybe you spent beyond your means for a fleeting thrill, ignoring the practical voice inside. That moment where the wanting overrode your reason, that was the pathos at work. It wasn't the feeling itself that was wrong, it was the power you gave it. Apatheia is the practice of hearing that desire, acknowledging it, yet keeping your hand firmly on the tiller of your choices. It's the freedom of not having to obey every emotional command. And in that freedom, a deeper, quieter form of joy becomes possible, one that doesn't need to be chased because it was never lost. The Stoics took the compass and turned it somewhere else. They pointed it toward virtue, not pleasure. That's the core of it. The only real good, the only thing that brings fulfillment, isn't a feeling. It isn't something you own. It's your character, the quality of your character. Wisdom, courage, justice, temperance. Those four things become the guide. Everything else, pleasure, pain, wealth, poverty, fame, being unknown, all of that is just material. It's the weather. Your virtue is how you sail the ship. That changes what success means. It pulls happiness inside. A good life isn't measured by what happens to you. It's measured by how you choose to respond. Someone in a hard situation can be flourishing if they face it with courage, with dignity. Someone surrounded by luxury can be miserable if they're cowardly or foolish or unjust. The state of your soul is the only metric that matters in the end. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor, he wrote a simple command to himself. He said, "Stop arguing about what a good man should be. Just be one." It's a call to action. The philosophy is lived in the choices, the quiet choices that build your character day by day. Take a practical example. You face a choice at work. There's a dishonest shortcut. It promises an easier outcome, more comfort, maybe a bonus or some praise. It offers a kind of pleasure, the pleasure of ease and reward. The virtuous path is harder. It requires honesty to do the work correctly, even if nobody notices. It demands temperance to forego that immediate gain. It demands justice to treat the process and the people fairly. In that moment, the Stoic asks which action builds character, which one aligns with wisdom and integrity. The pleasure of the shortcut is an indifferent. It's preferred, but it's not good. The virtue of honest work is the good itself. The fulfillment comes not from the reward that might follow, but from knowing you acted rightly. You strengthened your inner citadel. That's a satisfaction nothing outside can give or take away. It shifts the entire goal. The hedonist asks, how do I feel? The Stoic asks, how do I act? The pursuit of virtue becomes its own reward, a serene state. It frees you from the roller coaster, from chasing pleasures and losing them. Your worth isn't contingent on fortune's whims anymore. It's anchored in something you command, your own moral purpose. So here's a question, a quiet audit. If you could only be remembered for one virtue, one quality of character, which would it be? Would it be for your wisdom, your clear judgment when things are difficult? Your courage, your strength facing fear, your justice, your fairness to others, or your temperance, your mastery over your own desires? The answer isn't about branding. It's a mirror. It shows you where you instinctively place the highest value, and maybe where you might begin to align your daily choices with that guide. Because in the Stoic view, that alignment is the only journey that leads home. Temperance is that quiet guardian at the gate of pleasure. The Greeks had a word for it, sophrosyne. Soundness of mind, self-control, a kind of deep harmony. It's not the enemy of enjoyment. It's the wise companion. It teaches us the art of enough. It's the rational regulator of desire, the inner voice that knows when to start, when to savor, and when to stop. It lets us experience pleasure without being consumed by it, without letting the guest become the master of the house. Seneca put it well. He said the wise man enjoys pleasures without being their prisoner. He uses them, he doesn't serve them, he takes them as they come, and he doesn't fear their departure. That's the essence. Temperance isn't about grimly saying no. It's about saying yes with clear boundaries. It's the wisdom that sees excess doesn't amplify joy, it dulls it. It turns a gift into a burden, a feast into a sickness, a hobby into an obsession. The goal is to set rational limits drawn not by external rules, but by your own understanding of what serves your tranquility, your purpose. Think of two ways of watching a show. The first is the binge. You start one episode and autoplay pulls you into the next, and the next. Hours dissolve. You're not really savoring the story anymore. You're just consuming to fill a space driven by a passive compulsion. When you finally stop, there's often a hollow feeling, a sense of time lost. Then there's the temperate approach. You choose a single episode, you give it your full attention, you enjoy the narrative, the craft. When it ends, you sit with the experience for a moment. Then you consciously turn it off and move to something else, reading, a walk, meaningful work. The pleasure was real, but it was contained. It didn't spill over and flood your day. You decided when it began and ended. That's temperance in practice. It's the assertion of your choice over the pull of passive consumption. This applies everywhere. With food, it's eating to satisfaction, not to discomfort. With spending, it's purchasing for value and need, not for the fleeting thrill of acquisition. With conversation, it's speaking with purpose, not just filling silence with noise. Temperance asks us to insert a pause between the impulse and the action. In that pause, we ask a simple question: is this serving my higher aim, or is it just a momentary craving? The answer guides the hand, so here's a small invitation. Today, choose one area of your consumption: food, media, spending, even talking. For this one day, practice conscious moderation. Not as a punishment, but as an experiment in awareness. If it's media, set a timer for your leisure and honor it. If it's food, eat one meal with deliberate slowness, stopping before you feel full. Observe what happens in that space you create. You might find the pleasure, when framed by limits, becomes sharper, more appreciated, and the freedom you gain, the freedom from compulsion, that's a deeper satisfaction than the thing itself could ever provide. This is the art of enough. It's how we enjoy the gifts of the world without becoming indebted to them. Stoics would deliberately seek out the opposite of pleasure. That sounds like a contradiction, but it was central to what they did. They called it voluntary hardship. It was training, a spiritual exercise to build an inner fortress so strong that neither pain nor pleasure could get inside. The goal wasn't to suffer. It was to prove something to yourself, to show through direct experience that your happiness doesn't depend on perfect comfort. That you can be content, even serene, when conditions are difficult. It was like a vaccine. By choosing a small dose of discomfort, you immunize yourself against the panic of real loss. The teacher, Musonius Rufus, was clear. He said we should practice want, sometimes live as if we were poor. Practice endurance by embracing toil. Practice self-control by deliberately facing things we desire and walking away. This training, he argued, makes the soul strong. It turns philosophy from a theory in the mind into a resilience in the bones. Think of Cato the Younger. The stories say he would walk through Rome in odd, simple clothing, indifferent to the stairs. He would go barefoot in cold weather, eat plain meals when lavish ones were available. He wasn't making a public show, he was running a private experiment, testing his own judgments. Could he remain the same person with the same inner peace if his external conditions changed? Every time he passed the test, his freedom grew. His need for approval, for physical ease, diminished. He was proving his worth was internal. You can translate this now. Without any dramatic asceticism, it's about inserting small, conscious challenges into the stream of automatic comfort, a cold shower at the end of your normal routine. Not to punish the body, but to train the mind in the moment of choice. When the water hits, there's that primal urge to flee back to warmth. Staying under it is an act of will. It's a minute-long lesson, enduring an unpleasant sensation without your world collapsing. It proves you are more than your craving for comfort, or a voluntary digital detox for a set period each day. Choosing to sit with your own thoughts without the constant stream of distraction is practicing want. It's a voluntary hardship for a mind used to endless input. You practice wanting the quiet and find it is enough, even taking the harder route, walking instead of driving for a short errand, taking the stairs. That can be a micro-training in embracing a little effort willingly. The power is in the inversion. We are wired to avoid discomfort and seek ease. This practice asks us to pause that wiring, to choose the less comfortable option deliberately in a controlled setting. And in doing so, you break the chain, the one that says discomfort equals threat and comfort equals safety. You learn you are safe in discomfort, that you can be okay, even focused and calm when things aren't easy. That knowledge is liberating. It shrinks the territory that pleasure and pain can claim over your inner state. So a simple challenge for the week ahead: don't overhaul your life. Choose one small, voluntary hardship, one thing that pushes gently against your automatic preference for ease. It could be skipping a snack you routinely have, not out of dieting but as an exercise in choice. It could be leaving your phone in another room for an hour each evening. It could be taking a walk in weather you'd normally avoid. The point is the conscious choice. Before you do it, remind yourself why. You are not depriving yourself. You are training a muscle, the muscle of your will, the muscle that says your peace is not for sale to the highest bidder of comfort. Notice what arises. The initial resistance, the rationalizations your mind offers to quit, and then notice the quiet strength that comes from following through. That strength, that proven resilience, is a pleasure far deeper than any temporary comfort. It's the pleasure of knowing you are free. Are you just chasing the next pleasure, or can you find something worthwhile right here, right now? That's where the split happens. Hedonism usually depends on waiting. You put off feeling okay now for a bigger thrill later. You plan the vacation for months. You save up for the purchase. You dump all your expected joy into the weekend, and that creates this low-grade longing. You're mentally somewhere else because real life seems like it's always about to start once the pleasure gets here. The Stoic response to that restlessness is a phrase, amor fati, love of fate. It's not just giving up, it's actively embracing the present exactly as it is. It's finding the value and purpose woven into the fabric of the now, even when the now is plain or hard. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this. He said, "Don't hope for events to go how you want. Hope for them to go as they do, and your life will go smoothly." He talked about accepting what happens to you as the thread of your fate. That's the core of it. It's a complete shift from seeing the present as a stepping stone to a better future, to seeing it as the only place life is actually happening, the only place your character gets built. Your virtue gets used. Take a simple contrast. Imagine waiting anxiously for a party on the weekend. It's only Tuesday, but your mind is already there. The workday feels like a hurdle, the chores are a nuisance, your attention is borrowed against future excitement, so the present feels dull, even heavy. Now shift it, it's a Tuesday evening, the tasks are the same, dishes to wash, a report to finish, a quiet house. Amor Fati asks you to engage with these not as obstacles, but as the substance of your life. Washing dishes can be an act of mindfulness, of caring for your space. Finishing the report is diligence, using your skill. The quiet is a chance for rest or thought. The value isn't in some sensory thrill from the activity. It's in the quality of attention you bring to it, the intention. In the first scene, you're a tourist in your own life, waiting for the highlights. In the second, you're the architect, building meaning into the foundation. This practice attacks that restless need for future excitement. When you learn to love your fate, to find the good, the useful, the purposeful in your current conditions, you stop needing the next hit to feel alive. Your contentment becomes portable. It goes with you into traffic, into waiting rooms, into boring meetings. It turns the whole world from a source of potential pleasures into a field for action. For virtue, so here's a direct instruction: pause right where you are, listen to the sounds around you, feel the surface you're on, look at the light in the room. Now, find one single thing in your current environment to accept with gratitude, exactly as it is. It might be the device you're using to hear this, the roof overhead. The steady rhythm of your breath. Don't wish it were different, don't compare it. For just this moment, see it as a thread in the tapestry of your fate and accept it. That small act of conscious acceptance is a micro-practice of Amor Fati. It's a quiet rebellion against the tyranny of next. It plants your feet in the only time you ever really have. Pleasure is private, but chasing it has a public cost. That chase is a solitary thing, a turn inward. Stoicism is different, it's a social philosophy. Its four main virtues include justice. It asks us to look outward, to see our place in a web of human connection. When pleasure becomes the main goal, that web starts to fray. Duty to the common good fades. And the question becomes, what feels good to me right now? This isn't about small indulgences. It's a pattern of consumption, of resource and attention that treats the world like a pantry for private enjoyment. With little thought for who else might be hungry, there's an ancient teacher, Hierocles. He offered an image. Picture a series of circles, concentric circles. At the center is your own mind. The next circle is your immediate family, then extended family, then your local community, your country, finally, all of humanity. Our task, he said, is to draw those outer circles inward, to bring the concerns of others closer to our own, to expand our sense of self to include more people. A life centered on pleasure does the opposite. It draws everything inward toward that central point of self-gratification. The outer circles are left neglected. They grow faint. Then there's the ethics of luxury in a world of need. This isn't about guilt for every comfort. It's about scale and awareness. The Stoic virtue of justice is about fairness. Giving each their due. When vast resources are funneled into purely personal, fleeting pleasures, extravagances for status or a sensory thrill, while basic needs in our community go unmet, that's a failure of that virtue. It's a withdrawal from the social contract, and the resources aren't just money, they're attention, care, time, even gossip, which we often call harmless fun or social bonding, has a cost. It trades the dignity and reputation of another person for a moment of intrigue or a sense of belonging. It weakens trust, the glue of community, for a cheap social pleasure. The Stoic would ask if that momentary enjoyment is worth the erosion of justice, treating another person as an object for entertainment, not a fellow member of the human circle. So here's a quiet question, maybe an uncomfortable one. Has your pursuit of a personal pleasure ever come at a cost to someone else, even unintentionally? Maybe you insisted on a plan that inconvenienced others for your own enjoyment. Perhaps you consumed a resource without thinking of who else might depend on it. or repeated a story that painted someone in an unfair light just for a laugh. The goal here isn't to cultivate shame. It's to illuminate connections we often overlook. It shows how a private chase can have public ripples, how it weakens the bonds a good life actually depends on. Justice reminds us we aren't isolated pleasure centers. We're nodes in a network. Our flourishing is tied to the flourishing of others. To ignore that tie is to build happiness on unstable ground that grows more barren the more we take from it for ourselves alone. The Stoics saw humans as rational and social, not machines built for pleasure. That difference is the foundation of their main idea, to live according to nature. Which doesn't mean living in the woods, it means living in line with how we're designed. Our design is to use reason, to seek community, to act with purpose. And that design has limits built into it. A body needs a certain amount of food, rest, shelter. A mind needs engagement, learning, connection. Those are natural needs. Hedonism, chasing endless pleasure, cultivates something else. Artificial appetites, desires with no natural limit, because they're not about fulfilling a need. They're about chasing a feeling. Zeno, who founded Stoicism, put the goal simply: to live in agreement with nature. Cleans, who came after him, added that this meant living according to our own nature and the nature of the whole universe. For a human, that meant using our specific gift, reason, to see what's truly good and to align our actions with the rational order of things. A boundless appetite is irrational. It ignores the natural limits of the body. It ignores the social world we live in. It treats the world like an infinite buffet for a finite self. Take eating. To eat for nourishment, to fuel the body for its work, that's natural. It follows a clear, rational need. You listen to the body's true signals. You stop when you're satisfied. Now take eating for the sensation of taste alone, far past nourishment, into discomfort. That's feeding an appetite, not a need. The pleasure of taste, which they called a preferred indifferent, gets elevated above the rational purpose of the act. It pushes past the natural limit of enough, and this applies everywhere. Sleep is for restoration. Pushing past that need for lazy indulgence leaves you groggy. It weakens your capacity for the day's rational duties. Social connection fulfills our nature as communal beings. Using social interaction purely for validation or gossip twists that natural function. Turns it into an engine of anxiety and comparison. The chase for constant comfort, for a life with no friction, is also unnatural. Our nature is to be active, to engage with challenges, to grow through effort. A life of pure, passive pleasure atrophies the very faculties that make us human. So here's a quiet audit. Look at your daily routines. Find one appetite you regularly feed that goes beyond what's natural or necessary. It might be the compulsion to scroll long after you've gotten any useful information. It could be the second helping you take not from hunger but from habit, or just because the flavor is there. Maybe it's the need for your environment to be perfectly quiet, perfectly arranged before you can start meaningful work. A demand for comfort that actually stifles action. Don't judge it, just see it. See the line between the natural need and the cultivated appetite. That space between them is where your freedom is. To live according to nature is to gently pull back from that extra, unnecessary reach. It's to find a deep sufficiency in meeting the need without fueling the endless want. In that sufficiency, you aren't settling for less. You're coming home to what you actually are. The chase for pleasure is a competition that never ends. It makes us look sideways. We measure our own experiences against the highlights of other people. Our joy becomes relative. It doesn't depend on its own quality, but on whether we have more or better or newer things than someone we know. That's the engine of envy. It's built right into a hedonistic view. If the goal is to accumulate pleasant experiences, then other people become our benchmarks. They become our rivals. Their vacation photos, their new possessions, their apparent ease, that's not just their life. It becomes a silent commentary on our own life, on whether our life is adequate. The Stoics saw this as a profound error, a diversion from the only race that matters, which is the one within yourself. Epictetus offered a clear exit. He taught that happiness begins exactly where comparison ends. Your flourishing, your eudaimonia, is an internal condition. It's measured by the state of your character, not by the contents of your social feed. When you take virtue as your metric, your progress in wisdom, courage, justice, temperance, you step off the treadmill. The exhausting treadmill of relative pleasure. No one can have more courage than you. No one can possess a greater portion of your integrity. These goods are non-rivalrous. They're entirely your own to cultivate. Comparing your moral progress to someone else's is pointless. It also misunderstands the goal. The only person you're truly competing with is the person you were yesterday. Social media is the modern arena for this ancient struggle. It's a perpetual highlight reel, a festival of other people's preferred indifference. We scroll through a cascade of successes, celebrations, idealized moments. And it's designed to make us feel we are missing out. That vacation looks more exotic. That meal looks more delicious. That family looks more harmonious. The algorithm feeds on our engagement, and that engagement is often fueled by envy, by longing. We're comparing our raw, behind-the-scenes reality to someone else's carefully edited finale. It turns life into a spectator sport, one where we always feel we're losing. The Stoic response isn't to delete all accounts, though you could. It's to change what you're looking for. It's to audit your consumption with one question in mind, the question of virtue. Does this content inspire me to be better, to think more deeply, to act more justly? Or does it trigger a hollow sense of wanting, a subtle anxiety that my life is less vibrant, less successful, less pleasurable? So here's a small, concrete act of rebellion. Sometime today, open that social platform, scroll slowly, and pay attention to your gut reaction. Identify one account, just one, that consistently makes you feel less capable, less content, or simply envious of a lifestyle. Not an account that challenges you intellectually, but one that primarily sells an illusion of pleasure you feel compelled to chase. Unfollow it, do not announce it, do not judge the person behind it. This is not about them. It is a surgical edit of your own mental environment. You are removing a source of irrational comparison, clearing space to focus on your own path. You are practicing Epictetus's command, drawing your happiness back from the external world of appearances into the internal world of your own choices. In that quiet space, freed from the noise of comparison, your own progress becomes clear, wonderfully, peacefully clear. Seneca put it plainly. He said, "It's not that life is short, but that we waste so much of it. We have this life and we spend it badly." So the Stoics had this practice. Memento Mori, remember you will die. It's not meant to be dark, it's meant to be clear, a way to create urgency. When you really hold that your time is finite, each moment gets heavier. The trivial things, the chase for shallow pleasure, you start to see them for what they are. A bad trade. You're trading a limited resource, your life, for something that doesn't last. Knowing it ends isn't about fear, it's about what matters. It asks this hard, simple question: is this how I want to use my one life, filling the hours with things that don't change me? Or building something real? Virtue becomes urgent then. Not because time is running out, but because time is the only place you can practice it. Every minute you spend soothing a craving is a minute you didn't spend on courage, or kindness, or learning, or someone else. Memento Mori makes that idea feel close. It's a nudge. Take 2 ways to spend a quiet evening. Say 3 hours. One way is to get lost in a video game. The game is built to give you little rewards, a constant drip of pleasure. You look up and the time is gone. You're left with this fog, this emptiness. Nothing in your actual life is different. No relationship is better. You haven't learned anything. The pleasure was real, but it was a dead end. It just makes you want more. The other way to spend those 3 hours is different. You might take the first hour to have a hard conversation you've been avoiding. It's uncomfortable. There's no pleasure in it, but it fixes something. It's practicing courage and justice. The next hour, you work on learning a few chords on an instrument. It's frustrating. Your fingers don't work right, but there's a quiet satisfaction in getting slightly better, in focusing completely. The last hour, you just sit with someone. Reading in silence, there's a peace there, a connection. Both evenings pass. One is an escape, the other is an investment. One spends the time, the other uses it. Memento Mori is about seeing that difference, feeling the weight of the choice. So here's a question. If you knew for sure you had 1 year left, which of your current pleasures would just stop mattering? Which habits, which distractions would suddenly feel like a waste of your last days? The answer isn't about what you'd start doing in that year. It's about what you'd stop. And that shows you everything. It shows you what you're doing out of habit or avoidance because you think you have endless tomorrows. Remembering death isn't about the dying. It's about the living. It pulls the trivial things into the light where they can't pretend to be important anymore. And in that cleared space, what's actually worth your limited time finally has room. The Stoics found a kind of joy, but it's on the far side of enough. It's not the joy of having everything. It's the joy of needing very little. That's their idea of sufficiency. And it's the way off the treadmill, the pleasure treadmill, because if your happiness isn't tied to the next thing you get, you can stop running. You can just stand still. And you find a contentment that isn't about what you own. This isn't some grim, austere life. It's not about punishment. It's a deep, quiet peace. It comes from seeing you already have what you need to be at peace. Your needs are met. Everything else is decoration. Epictetus put it simply. He described the wealth of a wise man. He said the wise man is rich by wanting nothing. His treasure is his lack of want. His freedom is in that independence. Independence from the cycle, the endless cycle of more. This sufficiency, it changes the world. The world stops being a marketplace of desires. It becomes a place of simple residence. You're not a consumer on a hunt anymore. You're a person at home. You can feel this difference in a space. Walk into a home that's been decluttered, where every item has a purpose or brings real value. There's a lightness in the air. A clarity. It feels calm, intentional. It's easy to move there, easy to think. Now walk into a home that's crammed, unused purchases, impulse buys, gadgets still in boxes. Clothes with the tags on. There's a silent heaviness, a background noise, a noise of obligation and waste, and each object is a spent resource, money, sure. But also the time it took to earn that money. The mental energy it takes to manage the stuff. One space supports tranquility, the other quietly undermines it. The clutter isn't just physical, it's a monument to misdirected desire, to a series of moments where pleasure was chased, caught for a second, and then left behind as a burden. The joy of sufficiency is the relief of setting that burden down. So here's a quiet prompt, a practical one. Take a moment. And in your mind, write down what enough looks like for you, in 3 areas, not a theoretical minimum, a realistic, comfortable sufficiency. First, material possessions. What do you truly need to live well, to do your work? Second, digital consumption. What amount of news or social media or entertainment actually informs you, actually refreshes you, instead of just filling time? Third, social commitments. What level of engagement leaves you connected, not drained, defining enough? That's a revolutionary act. It draws a line in the sand. On one side is the frantic chase, on the other side is your freedom. A pleasure makes a promise, and our first instinct is to believe it. That's the moment of assent. The Stoics called it a discipline for a reason. It's the practice of questioning that first impression. not letting the feeling of wanting something become an automatic command. Epictetus described impressions as visitors knocking at the door of your mind. You don't have to invite everyone in for dinner. You can just acknowledge them. Say hello, I see you, and then decide rationally if this guest aligns with your values, with your nature. That's the critical pause, the space between the feeling and the action. And in that space, your freedom lives. A pleasure presents itself, the cool taste of a drink on a hot day, the thrill of a notification, the allure of a new item in a store window. The impression is powerful. It makes its case. It says this will feel good, this will solve something, this will make you happy. The undisciplined mind assents immediately. It says, yes, you are right, I must have this, and off it goes, chasing the feeling. The disciplined mind hears the same knock. It acknowledges the sensation. Yes, that looks refreshing, that seems exciting, that appears desirable, but then it asks the rational question, is this impression telling me the whole truth? Is pursuing this in accordance with my nature and my goals? Is it good, or is it merely preferred? You assent to the fact of the pleasure, but you withhold assent from the runaway impulse that it must be had. Take the shiny object, you see it, the impression is immediate. I want that, it will make my life better, more complete, more impressive. The pause is where you insert a moment of reason. You ask, what is this truly? It's a piece of molded metal and glass. It offers a temporary novelty. Will it contribute to my virtue, to my wisdom or my temperance? Or will it merely feed a momentary craving, then become another item to manage, another draw on my resources? By asking, you move from being a passenger of the impression to the pilot of your response. The pleasure's argument is heard, but it is not the final judge, so here's a direct instruction. In the next 24 hours, you'll likely feel a small, impulsive pull toward a minor pleasure, an extra snack when you're not hungry, a quick scroll when you meant to work, an online cart waiting for one click. When you feel that tug, institute a 10-second pause. Just 10 seconds in that silence, do nothing, breathe, let the impression knock, and then quietly ask it Epictetus's question, is this within my control? Is pursuing this aligned with my nature, or is it a slavery to a feeling? You don't have to say no, you simply have to choose consciously. That tiny gap of 10 seconds is where you train the muscle of assent. It's where you build the inner citadel, brick by conscious brick. The chase is thrilling until you catch it. That thing you wanted, once you have it, often feels like a false summit. You get to the top and the view is just ordinary. The path down looks the same as the one you came up. This emptiness isn't a personal flaw. It's a design flaw in how we pursue pleasure. The Stoics saw this a long time ago, long before we had a term for it, like the hedonic treadmill. Seneca wrote about it. He said our desires aren't satisfied when we fulfill them. They just transfer. You satisfy one and another one rises up, just as demanding. The goal you thought would bring contentment becomes the new normal. And from that new baseline, a new desire emerges. That's the treadmill. You keep running, but the scenery doesn't change. You never actually arrive. Think about the feeling after a vacation. You plan it for months. You look forward to the escape, the new places, the freedom. The trip itself might be wonderful, but then you come home. The laundry is there. The same job, the same routines, that feeling of escape evaporates, sometimes in hours. What's left is a kind of deflation. The pleasure was real, but it was a closed loop. It had a start and an end, and its end leaves a vacuum. The vacation didn't change your capacity for happiness. It was just a temporary break, so you start dreaming of the next trip. A little sooner, a little more exotic, hoping it will last this time, or a promotion, pursued just for the status, the title, the corner office. You get it. There's a celebration, a rush of validation, but after a few weeks, the new office is just your office. The title is just your name on emails. The work might even be more stressful. If the pursuit was only for the external reward, the pleasure of being recognized, then the achievement feels hollow. You find yourself looking sideways again, eyeing the next rung on the ladder because the feeling you chased has already faded. The goal was a destination, but happiness was in the manner of traveling. And you missed the journey. That quick pivot to a new desire is the sign. It shows the pleasure was never the true source of fulfillment. It was a temporary distraction. From a deeper need for purpose, for inner stability, the Stoic alternative is to build your foundation on that stability itself, on virtues you practice, not consume. The satisfaction from acting with courage or integrity doesn't fade when the action is over. It becomes part of your character, it compounds, it doesn't leave a vacuum. It fills you with something that lasts. So think about a major goal you once achieved, something you saved for, a position you worked tirelessly to get, a relationship you longed for. Once you had it, how long did the pure pleasure last? Was there a moment, days or weeks later, where a quiet voice asked, "Is this all there is?" And did your mind almost immediately start looking for the next thing to want? That pivot isn't ambition. It's the signature of the treadmill. Recognizing it is the first step to stepping off. Your body isn't a temple, it's a tool. That modern idea, treat your body like a temple, it usually means decorating it, indulging it, making it a source of pleasure. The Stoics saw that as a kind of slavery, a subtle one, because if your body is the main place you look for happiness, you've tied your well-being to something fragile. Something that ages, something you don't fully control. Marcus Aurelius wrote a reminder to himself. He said, "You're a little soul carrying a corpse. Your body is a shell, a vessel. It's not you. The real you is the rational mind inside." This isn't rejecting the body. It's reclassifying it from a temple to be worshipped to a tool to be maintained. For a clear reason, so it can carry out what your rational self commands, your virtue. That view challenges how we over-identify with bodily sensation. Every ache becomes a crisis. Every craving becomes a command. Every sign of aging feels like a personal failure. We give these external sensations, pleasure and pain, so much power over our inner state. We let the vessel dictate to the captain. The Stoic practice is to care for the body diligently but dispassionately. Keep it healthy and functional so it doesn't become an obstacle to your duties, to your thinking, to your engagement with the world, but not to pamper it as the source of your identity or your joy. You can see this in two approaches to fitness. One is the aesthetic pursuit, the chase for a certain look, driven by the pleasure of admiration, the pride of comparison. It's often tied to strict, joyless routines, and a fragile self-image that changes with each glance in the mirror. The body is the temple, and its appearance is the idol. The second is functional care. Movement to maintain energy, strength to be capable, health to have a clear mind. This isn't about punishment or pride. It's about maintenance, like keeping a work vehicle clean and in good repair. Not because you love the truck, but because you need it to do the work. The Stoic aims for the second. The goal is to have a body that serves the soul, not a soul that serves the body. So here's a quiet audit of your own habits. Do you care for your body primarily for how it feels or how it looks, or for what it allows you to do and contribute? Does your routine come from nurturing a tool for a larger life, or from chasing a sensation, the pleasure of a certain appearance, the numbness of exhaustion, the comfort of constant satiation? The answer isn't about right or wrong, it's about clarity. It shows you where you've placed a piece of your happiness. If it's in the vessel, then the vessel's inevitable wear becomes a source of dread. If it's in the work the vessel does, then its condition is just a practical matter, one you manage with reason, not with fear. That shift turns health from an object of anxiety into an instrument of purpose. Wealth seems like it should bring security, but it often creates a different kind of servitude. The Stoics saw this paradox. They saw the danger in thinking riches cause happiness, rather than being a preferred indifferent. To them, wealth was just material. It could be used well or poorly, but it couldn't make a person good or fulfilled. The corruption starts when we believe it can. When we tie our peace to its presence, managing great wealth takes a staggering amount of attention. It becomes a full-time job: protection, growth, allocation. It breeds a constant, low-grade fear of loss, and that fear is a poverty of the soul. Your mind could be on virtue, on connection. Instead, it's hijacked by spreadsheets, market fluctuations, the silent dread of a bad investment. It can lead to injustice. Protecting that wealth might tempt you to compromise fairness. And it cultivates a softness, an aversion to discomfort, because you get used to a world where money smooths every path. Seneca was wealthy himself. He wrote about this tension. In On the Happy Life, he cautioned to possess wealth without letting it possess you. He warned the man owned by his possessions isn't rich, he's indentured. True wealth, he argued, is wanting nothing. It's the independence of knowing your peace isn't in your bank account. Consider Diogenes. He lived in a tub, owned a single wooden bowl. And the modern high net worth individual, Diogenes saw a child drinking from his hands. He threw away his bowl, said the child had outdone him in simplicity. His freedom was absolute, no fear of thieves, market crashes, shifts in status. His attention was entirely his own, now the high net worth individual. Their life is a web: assets, insurance, security systems, tax strategies, lifestyle maintenance. A single phone call can unravel their day. Their public image is curated. Choices are calculated for preservation, not desire. The anxiety of loss shadows every gain, which life seems richer in peace, in autonomy, in self-possession. So a reflective prompt, not about envy but clarity. If your wealth doubled tomorrow, what new fears come with it? Would you worry more about theft, about choosing the right friends, about spoiling your children? Would your decisions become more burdened? This isn't to dismiss ambition or provision. It's to illuminate the hidden tax on the prize. To see the whole transaction, not just the glittering front. From the Stoic view, the only wealth that never impoverishes is character, because it's the one fortune that grows the more you spend it. The Stoics had a practice they called poverty. It wasn't about glorifying hardship, it was an experiment, a way to break the spell of pleasure. You walk into its opposite. You see how many of our needs are just desires in disguise. When you step into a simpler life, even briefly, you prove something. You prove your adaptability, your resilience. You feel the weight of the wants you carry, and you see how much lighter you could be. Musonius Rufus taught this. He was Epictetus's teacher. He said we should practice want, live as if we were poor at times, eat plain food, wear simple clothes, endure a little hardship willingly. His reasoning was direct. It makes the soul strong. It prepares you for any turn of fortune. But more than that, it cleans the lens of your judgment. A lavish meal seems like a necessity until you've eaten simply by choice. A soft bed feels like a right until you've slept soundly on a firm one. The practice strips away the story we attach to comfort. It lets you see the object for what it is, and your desire for what it truly is: a preference, not a need. You could try a poverty day. It's not self-punishment. It's a conscious, temporary experiment. For one day, eat only simple staples: plain oats, lentils, vegetables, water. Use minimal technology, only what's essential for work or safety. Wear your most basic clothes. Avoid entertainment that's purely passive consumption. The goal isn't to suffer, it's to observe. Notice the thoughts that arise, the rationalizations. The little voice that says, "But I deserve my treat, my distraction, my comfort." That voice is the spell at work. It's the mechanism that turns a want into a perceived need. By not obeying it for a set period, you break its authority. You demonstrate through action that your peace and your capability don't depend on these extras. You might even find a strange clarity in the simplicity, a quiet mind, a sense of sufficiency that feels more genuine than the thrill of consumption. So here's a quiet challenge. Look at your life right now. Identify 3 things you genuinely believe you need, not luxuries, things you feel are essential to your well-being or your routine. Maybe it's your daily specialty coffee, your streaming subscriptions, a certain brand of clothing, the constant availability of your smartphone. Now ask yourself this. Could you live without this thing for 1 month? Not in theory, but in practice. If the answer is a defensive no, you've likely found a desire masquerading as a need. The practice of poverty isn't about giving these things up forever. It's about knowing from experience that you could, and in that knowing you reclaim a freedom. The freedom of choice instead of the slavery of necessity. You want to be remembered for what you felt or for what you did, what you stood for. That's the Stoic long view. A life that's centered on sensation, it lives and dies in the present. It leaves behind a memory of consumption, but a life oriented toward virtue, toward duty that plants seeds. Seeds that grow long after you're gone. That's the Stoic idea of legacy, and it's rooted in this concept they had, sympatheia, the interconnectedness of the whole cosmos. They saw the universe as a single living organism, each of us a part of it, so our actions, they ripple through that whole. To live just for private pleasure, then, is like a single cell gorging itself. Ignoring the health of the entire body, it's a misunderstanding, a fundamental misunderstanding of our role. Marcus Aurelius, he came back to this duty in his private writings. He reminded himself his purpose was to be useful to the human community. He wrote that what brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee. So your legacy, from this view, it isn't about fame, it isn't about monumental achievements, it's about the quality of your contribution, the integrity of your part. Your part in the larger story, it's about whether your presence made the human hive, in some small way, stronger or kinder, more rational. You can contrast 2 ways to spend a weekend. A precious weekend. One path is a luxurious spa retreat, entirely focused on personal restoration, on sensory pleasure, massages, quiet pools, exquisite meals. It feels deserved, a reward. The pleasure is real, the relaxation is genuine, but when the weekend ends, what remains? A sense of personal refreshment, sure. But the external world is unchanged, your community is unaltered. The other path is volunteering those same hours for a cause aligned with justice, tutoring a child, cleaning a public space, serving meals. This work might be tiring. It offers no luxurious sensations. It might even be frustrating, but it leaves something behind. A small, tangible improvement in the shared world, a connection forged, a skill passed on. The benefit lives in someone else, and so it lives in the whole. The Stoic would argue the second choice, while less pleasurable right now, it builds a legacy. It performs your duty as a part of the human whole. It answers the question of what you are here for. Your life becomes a sentence in a story much larger than yourself. So here's an exercise. A quiet one. Find a moment of stillness and write a single sentence. The one sentence you would hope to be remembered by. Not an epitaph of titles, not possessions, but a line that captures the essence of your contribution. What did you stand for? What quality did you bring to the hive? Let that sentence be your quiet guide. A North Star, far brighter than any fleeting sensation. Freedom is a fortress you build in your own mind. The Stoics had a name for it, the inner citadel. It's the final refuge, the one place no outside force can ever really conquer. Not pleasure, not pain. When the world offers a feast of sensation or delivers a blow, you have a place to retreat. It's not a physical hiding spot, it's a mental stronghold. Its walls are built from the four virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, temperance, and its governor, the sole ruler, is your reason. That's the core of Stoic freedom. Your happiness isn't out there to be given or taken. It's in here, in this citadel where you are always sovereign. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this retreat constantly. He was an emperor. He faced endless political intrigue, military campaigns, and he said, people look for retreats in the country, by the sea, in the hills. But you can retreat into yourself at any time. Nowhere is there a more peaceful or less crowded retreat. He was describing the citadel, the act of turning your attention inward, to the seat of your own judgment, where the noise of the world fades into a manageable hum. Imagine two people at the same lavish, stressful feast. One is utterly captivated, thrilled by each new delicacy, anxious to try everything, equally distressed by a spilled wine or a perceived slight. Their evening is a roller coaster. Their inner state is completely at the mercy of the events. The other person enjoys the same food, engages in the same conversations, but they do so from within their citadel. They appreciate a fine flavor, but its absence wouldn't disturb them. They hear a rude comment, but they process it with reason, not raw reaction. They are present but not captive. The feast happens around them, their peace happens within them. The difference isn't in the experience, it's in the location of the self. One is adrift on the sea of sensation. The other is anchored in the harbor of their own mind. Now consider a moment of frustration, a delayed flight, a missed meal, a broken promise of comfort. The untrained mind rages against the circumstance. It feels attacked, impoverished. The person who has fortified their inner citadel meets the same event differently. They feel the initial flicker of disappointment, that's natural, but then they retreat. They step back mentally into that calm inner space. They assess. Is this within my control? No. What then is my rational response? To endure with patience, to use the time well, to see the inconvenience as material for practicing virtue. The deprivation occurs outside the walls. It does not breach the gates. So here's a brief exercise, a visualization to make this real. Find a quiet moment, even just a minute. Close your eyes if you can. Recall a recent minor craving for a snack, for a distraction, for a moment of gossip. Feel the pull of it. Now, in your mind's eye, see yourself taking a step back. See that craving as an external event, like weather outside a window. You are in a sturdy, quiet room, your inner citadel. The walls are solid, the space is calm. From here, you observe the craving. You acknowledge it is there, but you also know you are here, separate, safe, and in command. You decide, from this place of calm command, whether to engage with it or not. The power shifts. You are no longer being pulled. You are choosing from a position of strength. Practice this retreat, even for a few seconds, the next time a wave of desire or irritation hits. It's the daily maintenance of your sovereignty, the ultimate defense against a world that constantly tries to trade your peace for a passing pleasure. Luxury wasn't a reward in the Stoic view. It was a test of character, and most people failed it. The danger wasn't the silks or the spices themselves. It was what they did to the spirit over time. Seneca watched this like a physician. He wrote that constant bathing, perpetual feasting, daily perfumes, they weaken the body. And more importantly, the soul. The body gets used to a narrow band of experience. It expects warmth, softness, constant satiation. And the soul, which should be in command, starts to mimic that fragility. It becomes intolerant of hardship, of friction, of anything outside that narrow comfort zone. That's the moral danger. Luxury doesn't just spoil the palate. It atrophies the will. It trades a rugged capacity for endurance for a brittle dependence on perfect conditions. Your courage, your ability to face difficulty, it quietly erodes when it's never called upon. You become like an unused muscle. It looks fine at rest, but the moment it's asked to lift any weight, it fails. The Stoics saw this softness as a profound vulnerability. Fortune is change, that's her nature. To build a life that only functions in calm weather is to build a house on a cliff edge. The first storm shows the weakness in the foundation. Now consider our modern landscape, total convenience. Food arrives with a tap. Entertainment is an endless, passive stream. Communication needs no movement, no waiting. Physical labor is outsourced to machines we never see. This isn't progress in the Stoic sense if it makes us less capable, less resilient. The body adapted to this life loses its strength, its stamina. The mind adapted to constant, easy stimulation loses its capacity for deep focus, for tolerating boredom, for persevering through complex, unstimulating tasks. We become specialists in comfort and amateurs in life. The slightest inconvenience, a delayed package, a slow internet connection, a room that's too hot or too cold, it can shatter our equilibrium. That's not just annoyance, it's a symptom of a soul that's forgotten how to endure. So here's a quiet, personal audit. Look at your own life, at the systems you've built for ease. Identify one area where you've allowed yourself to become softer. Is it in physical exertion, where you now drive distances you could walk? Is it in patience, where you become agitated after mere seconds of waiting? Is it in your diet, where you can't fathom a satisfying meal without a specific, often costly, ingredient? This isn't about guilt, it's about diagnosis. Seeing the soft spot is the first step. Then you can gently, rationally introduce a little necessary friction back into the system to remind both body and soul of the strength they still possess, waiting beneath the layers of comfort. Pleasure is something you get. Joy is something you do. The old thinkers, Aristotle and the Stoics after him, they made this distinction. They called it energeia. Activity, actualization, a life well lived. Its joy isn't in passive reception. It's in the active expression of your nature, in doing, in being fully engaged. That's eudaimonia, that flourishing. It's not a feeling that happens to you. It's a condition you generate through action, through using your highest faculties. Your reason, your creativity, your capacity for care. When you're actively expressing virtue, you're most fully human. You're fulfilling the design. Passive consumption, by its nature, makes you a spectator in your own life. You're processing inputs, not generating outputs. The world acts upon you, and that can be pleasant, but it can't, for the Stoics, lead to lasting fulfillment. It's the difference between watching a breathtaking documentary about the ocean and the arduous, salt-sprayed work of sailing a boat across it. One gives you images. The other gives you a story written by your own hands. Aristotle's idea of actualization, it deeply influenced the Stoics. He argued a thing's goodness is in its unique function. A knife is good if it cuts well. A horse is good if it runs well. For a human, our unique function is reason. So our good, our flourishing, is the active life of reason. In accordance with virtue, the Stoics embraced this. They saw virtuous action not as a separate duty, but as the very activity that produces the deepest satisfaction. It's the joy of a craftsman seeing a joint fit perfectly, of a teacher watching a concept click, of someone offering comfort exactly when it was needed. This joy is baked into the action itself. It doesn't vanish when the action stops. It becomes part of your character. You can feel this contrast in a single evening. Spend 3 hours scrolling through social media, consuming an endless stream of other people's moments. The algorithm feeds you a tailored mix: humor, outrage, envy. It's designed to be passively absorbing. When you finally put the phone down, there's often a hollow static, a sense of time having passed through you, leaving nothing behind. Now spend that same 3 hours building a shelf, or writing a letter to a friend, or helping a neighbor fix a fence. The work might be frustrating. Your hands might get sore. There's no algorithm smoothing the path, but when you finish, there's a tangible result in the world, and more importantly, a quiet resonance within you. You used your faculties, you solved problems, you created or repaired. That resonance is the joy of energeia. It's the signature of your nature expressing itself. So the challenge is direct. This week, identify 1 hour, typically lost to passive consumption. Maybe it's the late-night scroll or the background television you're not really watching. Guard that hour and within it commit to a single, concrete act of energeia. Don't make it a grand, overwhelming project. Bake bread from scratch, feeling the dough transform under your hands. Sit down and draw something, anything, with full attention. Repair that loose hinge instead of tolerating it. Offer to mentor someone in a skill you possess. The activity itself is the point. Observe the quality of your mind during the action and the quality of your satisfaction after. The goal isn't to abolish passive pleasure, but to remember you have another, deeper source of joy available. One that doesn't ask you to consume, but to contribute. The loudest gatherings leave the quietest echoes. For the Stoics, the typical feast, with all its noise and excess, was a missed opportunity. They took that same social energy and redirected it, not toward being alone, but toward a different kind of gathering, one built on dialogue. This was the community of the wise. A fellowship that nourished the soul, not just the palate. The goal wasn't to forget the world for a few hours, it was to understand it more deeply together. They traded the fleeting warmth of wine for the lasting warmth of shared insight. This companionship was a cornerstone, a higher, more durable form of what we might call pleasure. Food and drink address a physical need, but conversation that challenges you, that refines you, that addresses a human need, the need for growth, for clarity. To be seen and understood at the level of your character. A boisterous dinner party can be fun. It fills an evening with laughter, but how much of it do you remember the next morning? The jokes fade, the details blur. It was an event that happened to you. Now think of a deep, hours-long conversation with a single friend, where you discussed life's real questions. Your fears, your aspirations, a book that changed you. That conversation didn't just pass the time, it changed you subtly. It left you feeling lighter, clearer, more connected to yourself and to another person. That's the nourishment Seneca wrote of in his letters to Lucilius. Their entire correspondence is the epitome of this. A sustained, long-distance dialogue where one soul helped another cultivate wisdom. Seneca wasn't just giving advice, he was building a community of two, anchored in the pursuit of a good life. He wrote that we need to set our affections on some good man and keep him always before our eyes, so we may live as if he were watching us. That's the power of the right companion. They become a living standard for our own conduct. So here's a quiet, practical prompt. Look at your own circle. Who offers you the kind of conversation that leaves you better than it found you? Who asks questions that make you think, not just react? Who listens in a way that helps you hear your own truth? This person may not be the life of the party. They might be the one you talk to after the party ends. Make a choice this week. Instead of organizing another group event aimed at distraction, reach out to that one person. Suggest a walk, a simple meal, a deliberate phone call. Frame it not as catching up but as checking in on ideas, on challenges, on something you're trying to understand. Redirect that social energy toward dialogue. You might find the richness you've been seeking wasn't in more stimulation. It was in more meaningful connection. Making peace with pain breaks the power of pleasure. We chase comfort to outrun discomfort, to avoid the ache of effort or the sting of criticism, the friction of just existing. The Stoic response is to stop running, to turn and face it. When you stop seeing pain as the ultimate evil, you don't need pleasure as a constant escape. Your life isn't organized around avoidance anymore. That acceptance is a liberation. It removes the desperate fear behind so much of what we do. our consumption, our distraction, that frantic need to feel good all the time. Epictetus had the core idea. He said pain is unbearable only if our judgment says it is. Take away that judgment and you find you can bear it. The sensation is one thing. Our story about it, the panic, the belief it must not be happening, that's what turns it into suffering. The physical feeling of a sore muscle isn't pleasant. But the judgment that it's bad, that it shouldn't be happening, that creates resistance. And the resistance is the real distress. Accept the soreness as a natural sign of growth, even a welcome one, and the experience changes. It becomes part of a meaningful process, not a personal affront. This applies to every kind of hardship. Take the pain of hard study, the mental strain of a difficult subject, the frustration of not understanding. If your goal is only the pleasure of knowing, you'll quit at the first difficulty. But if you accept that strain as the necessary price for knowledge, you can lean into it. The pain stops being a signal to stop. It becomes the terrain you have to cross. The same is true for honest feedback. It stings to hear where you've fallen short. The immediate, pleasure-seeking impulse is to deflect, to argue, to find comfort in blaming the person giving it. But if you accept that sting as the cost of growth, you can listen through it. You can sift the useful truth from the discomfort of hearing it. That pain becomes a tool, not a wound to avoid at all costs. So much of what we call pleasure-seeking is really pain avoidance. We scroll to avoid the quiet ache of our own thoughts. We spend to avoid the feeling of lack. We overindulge to avoid the feeling of emptiness. When you accept that those underlying feelings are just part of being human, not emergencies to be medicated away, you can sit with them. And sitting with them, you find they're not monsters, they're just feelings, they pass, and your need for the distracting pleasure dissolves. There's a quiet, practical way to reframe this. Bring to mind a minor pain you're avoiding right now, a chore you dread, a difficult conversation you're postponing, a tedious task. Instead of seeing it as an obstacle to your peace, reframe it. See it as a natural part of a meaningful process. The chore is the care for your space, the foundation for clarity. The conversation is maintaining a relationship, the practice of courage. The tedious task is stewardship, an exercise in diligence. The sensation of reluctance is still there, but the story changes. It's no longer, this is an unbearable interruption. It becomes, this is the work, this is the price of the life I'm building. In that shift, you're not seeking pleasure. You're fulfilling a purpose, and purpose, the Stoics found, carries a satisfaction that fleeting pleasure can never match. The Stoics found a kind of arithmetic for happiness. It's not about addition, it's subtraction. Happiness equals, it's not getting what you want, it's wanting what you already have. Or wanting what's already in your power to be. That's the math of contentment. You reduce the denominator of desire, instead of trying to increase the numerator, possessions or experiences. A life of endless addition is a race you can't win. Because every new thing you get, a new desire is born to replace it. But a life that practices subtraction, that pares down what it truly needs, finds a quiet victory in ordinary moments. Epictetus gave the formula: wealth is not having great possessions, it's having few wants. Real abundance isn't measured by what fills your house, it's what empties from your mind. The anxiety of constant wanting, the peace from this shift isn't passive. It's an active, daily practice, reorienting your gaze from what's missing to what's present. From what you wish to acquire to what you can already appreciate. You can feel this arithmetic in a wardrobe. One closet is overflowing, packed with clothes, some with tags still on. Bought for a self that never quite arrived. Each morning, standing there, there's a low hum of anxiety, the feeling of nothing to wear amidst all that fabric. The choices become a burden. The other closet holds a curated selection, a few well-made, versatile pieces that are genuinely loved. Getting dressed takes seconds. Not minutes of fraught deliberation. There's a lightness in the space, physical and mental. The first is addition without satisfaction. The second is subtraction that yields peace. The clothes didn't change your life, the wanting did. This goes beyond material things. Consider your schedule, a calendar crammed with optional commitments, attended so you don't miss out. It creates a background strain, leaves you busy but not fulfilled. Subtracting one non-essential obligation creates space, and that space becomes a resource more valuable than the activity you gave up. Or your digital diet, the constant input of news, updates, comparisons. It feeds a desire to be constantly informed, constantly connected. It can leave you overwhelmed and strangely isolated. A conscious subtraction of those streams, even for a few hours, can restore clarity, connection to your immediate world. So here's a quiet prompt. Before this day ends, list 5 things you already have. Let only 1 or 2 be material: a reliable roof, the ability to walk, the loyalty of an old friend, the memory of a skill you possess, the quiet of early morning. Then, for a few minutes, practice the arithmetic. Don't just acknowledge these things, practice wanting them deeply, specifically. Feel a genuine desire for the comfort of that roof, for the utility of your limbs, for the constancy of that friendship. See what happens when your desire aligns with your reality. In that alignment, the equation solves itself. You have everything you want, and in that moment, according to the Stoics, you are truly, quietly rich. The rebellion is won in the quiet minutes after the day ends. That's where the Stoics built their most powerful tool, a nightly ritual, an honest accounting. Before sleep, they would sit with the day. They'd ask one question: was I led by reason, or was I led by appetite? This daily review is an accountability partner for your quiet war against hedonism. It's not about guilt. It's about clarity, a systematic audit to see where your actions aligned with your nature and where they were hijacked by the chase for a feeling. Seneca described his own practice. He wrote about anger. He said he would examine his entire day, going back over what he'd said, what he'd done. He would hide nothing from himself, excuse nothing. That was how he measured his progress, not by grand achievements, by the quality of his choices, moment to moment. The function of this review is to cultivate a specific self-awareness, the kind that catches the impulse as it happens. Over time, it retrains your automatic responses. You begin to see the fork in the road before you've barreled down the familiar path, the pleasurable path. You start to recognize the subtle difference between eating for nourishment and eating for the dull comfort of fullness, between speaking to contribute and speaking for the thrill of gossip, between resting to recover and avoiding unnecessary task. Let's walk through a sample review. You might ask yourself, did I work today with diligence, or was I driven by fear? The fear of falling behind. Did I engage in that difficult conversation with courage, or did I postpone it for the temporary peace of silence? Did I spend that hour in true leisure, refreshing my mind, or in mindless scrolling, numbing it? The questions are simple mirrors. They reflect the motive, not just the action. The goal is to see without drama where virtue was present and where pleasure held the reins. So here's a practical invitation. For the next 3 nights, commit to a 3-minute review. Find a quiet space just before bed. Ask yourself 2 questions. First, what is one thing I did today that was aligned with my better nature? Second, what is one choice where I followed an appetite instead of my reason? Don't judge the answers, just note them. This small act of nightly honesty is how you turn philosophy from a concept into a lived reality. It's how the rebellion becomes not just an idea. It becomes the story of your days. This was never about fighting enjoyment. It was about sovereignty. Stoicism's ancient rebellion, it was a liberation project, trying to free the individual from a subtle captivity, the hidden costs of a life chasing pleasure, the fragility of happiness built on shifting sands, the quiet anxiety of managing a self that needs perfect conditions, the profound slavery of handing your inner peace over to a world you can't command. The philosophers we've walked with, they offered a trade, a clear exchange. They asked you to trade fleeting sensation for lasting tranquility, to exchange the thrill of the next thing for the deep satisfaction of a virtuous character. This isn't a grim bargain of less, it's a conscious choice for more resilience, more autonomy, more of a life that is truly your own. Marcus Aurelius, in his private moments, he captured this. He wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Think only on those things that are in line with your principles and can bear the full light of day." The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it. To live according to nature and reason is to align your thoughts, and therefore your soul, with something enduring. It's to find a harmony within the constant change, a stillness at the center of the storm. See these principles not as restrictions fencing you in. See them as tools for building out. Tools for constructing an unshakable inner freedom, a citadel no external event can ever breach. This freedom is your birthright, not in spite of life's difficulties, but proven through them. As we close this, carry one question forward. Which single principle from this journey will you experiment with first? Will it be the 10-second pause before assenting to an impulse? The nightly review of your choices, the conscious practice of wanting what you already have. Choose one. Bring it into your week with the curiosity of an explorer. And if you feel moved to, share your reflections. This dialogue across centuries continues with us, here and now. What you build within yourself ripples outward. Let the building begin.